Hi from Xiamen University. I have a question for you. Do you know the Disney cartoon Aladdin? It looks like it's a Middle East Arab, right? But did you know that Aladdin originally was supposed to be from China and probably from Fujian? Don't believe me? I have a dozen of the Aladdin books from 100 years ago, 60 years ago. And unlike the Disney movies that are popular now, look at this. Does this Aladdin look like he's from the Middle East? Doesn't he look Chinese? Look at this architecture. Does that look Middle Eastern or does that look like Chinese architecture? How about this? This one. Look at those clothes. Does he look like he's from the Middle East? Aladdin and the Wonderful Lamp? What about this? Does that look Middle Eastern to you? It looks Chinese, right? What about the cover of this book? This one. That looks like a Chinese boy to me. This is Aladdin. What about that little boy? But read the first page. Read what it says. Let's see, I have to read what it says. It says, Aladdin was the son of a poor widow who lived in a city in China. China? This story is several hundred years old, and the original setting was not the Middle East. It was set in China, but then Disney made the cartoon, made it Middle East because that looks cool, and ever since then, everybody thinks it's Middle East. So why would a several hundred-year-old story say that Aladdin was from China? Well, where at in China? 1,000 years ago, our Fujian was the start of the Maritime Silk Road, right? We had 40,000 Muslims living in Quanzhou. Provincial government had Muslims in the trade department. So this was the greatest port in the ancient world. In fact, Marco Polo sailed from Minnan, from South Fujian, from Quanzhou. And when he was in Quanzhou, he said for every one ship in the West, he called it Christendom, for every one ship in the West, he said Quanzhou had 100 ships. So this was the greatest port of ancient trade in the world. In the Middle Ages, it was the greatest port. It was an amazing place. They had 40,000 Muslims. They had 7 Muslim mosques, 3 Franciscan cathedrals, Jewish synagogues, people from all over the world here in Fujian. And why would I say that Aladdin was from Fujian? Because this story talks about Aladdin. There's a few very small variations, but basically he's the son of a widow, poor tailor in China, in a city in China. And what city was famous in China 700, 1,000 years ago? It was Quanzhou. Quanzhou, which the Arabs called Zayton. And Zayton is where we get the English word satin. So very famous city to the Arabs. Even Sinbad. Do you know Sinbad, the sailor? The famous story of Sinbad and 7 voyages? One of the ancient Arabian tales says Sinbad went to Zayton, Quanzhou. And Sinbad, not Middle Eastern either, probably Chinese. In fact, he's probably Zhenghe. Why? Because Sinbad, according to legend, had 7 voyages around the world. Zhenghe also had 7 great voyages. Also, Zhenghe was Muslim. And Zhenghe's court name was what? Zhenghe's court name was Sanbao. Sanbao, Sinbad. Isn't that amazing? So a lot of people in the world know that Cinderella, that famous story, also came from an ancient Chinese story, but how many people knew that Aladdin was Chinese? So you should read up more on our very interesting Fujian history, very rich history, trade, culture, everything you can imagine. I'm glad to be a Minnan人.